They left Peltoris at first light. The white city lay behind them like a gleaming lie, marble domes catching the early sun as if nothing had happened in the night. The streets were quiet, clean, almost reverent. No smoke drifted now, no shouting carried. If there were whispers in the alleyways about missing worshippers, they had not yet risen above the ordinary gossip of traders and pilgrims. Or perhaps the city had already decided to forget. Jihye rode with her eyes fixed forward. She had slept, but not deeply. When she blinked, she saw flame on stone and heard the hollow beat of fists against a door that would not open. Every so often her hand drifted to her chest, as if to reassure herself that the amulet still lay there. It was warm against her skin, a small, steady heat that did not comfort her. Raphael did not speak at all as they passed through the last of the marble streets. His posture was straight, rigid, as if he had made his spine into a pole and nailed his conscience to it. Caleb kept to the side, pale, his gaze sliding away from anything that might resemble judgment. Joaquin rode at Jihye's shoulder, close enough that she could feel the calm of his presence, even when neither of them spoke. When the city finally fell away behind a low rise and the road narrowed back into the old coastal route, the sea wind struck them like a reprimand. They travelled in silence for a long while. The coast here was a blade edge. Cliffs rose steep on one side, and the other fell away into a restless grey sea. The gulls above sounded like laughter that did not belong to anything human. Far ahead, where the haze broke, Jihye could still make out the faint suggestion of the Vale of the Lurines in the distance. She was not even close. It never seemed to draw nearer no matter how far they walked. It sat in the world like a promise that refused to be hurried. The morning passed into noon, and the cliffs began to change. The rock faces grew less jagged, the land softened. The road dipped and dipped again, leaving the high places behind. By late afternoon they were nearer to sea level, the sound of the water no longer distant, but a constant presence, a breath that moved in and out with the tide. It was then they saw the camp. At first it looked like driftwood and canvas thrown together by some careless traveller. Then Jihye noticed the arrangement, the deliberate lines, the poles braced against the wind, the ropes tied with careful knots. A small rack of tools stood upright in the sand like a shrine. Nets were stretched between stakes. Glass jars glinted in the light. A man rose from beside a low table and turned at the sound of hooves. He wore a thick coat and salt encrusted along the hem and a scarf wrapped around his neck. His hair was dark and wind-tossed, and his face had the sunburnt toughness of someone who had lived where the sea could reach him at any moment. His eyes, however, were gentle, curious rather than hostile. He lifted a hand in greeting, palm open. "Travellers," he called, "you look like you've been carrying grief for miles." Caleb's shoulders tensed. Joaquin's hand went to his bow without drawing it. Raphael's eyes flicked across the camp, taking stock. Jihye kept her expression neutral, though something in the man's voice made her chest ache. It had been a long time since anyone had spoken to them as if they were simply people passing through. The man stepped closer slowly, mindful of their caution. "I'm not a thief, and I'm not with any militia. I'm a marine biologist. My name's Raptor." Caleb blinked. "Raptor?" The man smiled faintly. "It was meant as a joke when I was young. It stuck. I've learned not to fight it." Joaquin did not relax, but his posture eased by a fraction. "What are you doing out here alone?" "Hunting," Raptor replied. He gestured upon a long tube of glass resting on the table and a metal case lined with padded cloth. "Observing, measuring, collecting. I'm tracking a leviathan." The word carried weight. The sea seemed to answer it with a low swell against the shore. Caleb swallowed. "A leviathan? Those are stories." "Most stories start because something real frightened someone badly enough they needed a tale to carry it," Raptor said, matter of fact. This one is real, and it's been tearing apart fishing routes for weeks. People are vanishing, boats are being found, split like kindling. Something is moving along the currents that should not be moving so close to shore. Raphael dismounted, the first to step toward the camp. Why would the Scholar of the Sea be alone on a road like this? Because official hunters come with noise and harpoons and arrogance, Raptor replied. They frighten the thing into deeper water and then it returns somewhere else. I want to understand it. If possible, I want to end it. Jihye dismounted more slowly. She could smell fish oil and salt and something faintly metallic that reminded her of too much blood. She looked at the man's hands. They were calloused, but not in the way of a soldier. They were the hands of someone who'd worked with rope and tools and wet surfaces. Raptor's gaze moved over the group, taking them with quiet perception. Smoke stains still clung faintly to their cloaks, and exhaustion sat heavy on their faces. He did not ask where they had been or what they had done. He simply nodded once, as if he had seen enough to know that they needed food. I've got stew, he said. Fish and potato. It's not elegant, but it's warm. Sit with me. You look like you could use a human voice that isn't accusing you of anything. Jihye's throat tightened unexpectedly. Caleb shifted uncertainly, then looked at Raphael as if seeking permission. Raphael hesitated, his mind clearly weighing risks, then nodded once. We will accept, he said. Raptor's smile widened. Good. Come on then. The sea makes bad company if you're already carrying too much. They tethered the horses at a distance and joined Raptor at his low camp. He poured thick stew into bowls and handed each of them a wooden spoon. The warmth of it eased something in Jihye's stomach that she had not realized was clenched. Caleb ate quickly, as if afraid the food might be taken away. Joaquin ate slower, eyes still scanning the horizon. Raphael ate with the careful restraint of someone who did not fully trust comfort. Raptor sat opposite them, bowl in hand, and watched the sea as he spoke. The Leviathan's name is Estatrix, he said, or at least that's what the old coastal fishermen call him. They say is the bastard son of Leviathan royalty. Caleb choked slightly on his stew. Royalty? Raptor nodded, calm. Leviathans are not simply beasts. They are ancient. Their kind of hierarchy and lineage, though we only see the edges of it when their paths cross ours. There are deep waters where they rule themselves in ways humans cannot imagine. Estatrix was born too wrong or born unwanted. The stories differ. Some say he was too small, some say he was too violent, some say he was born with a mark that made the deep reject him, but all agree on one thing: he does not belong among his kind. Jihye listened, unwillingly drawn in. The idea of something vast and powerful being cast out stirred a familiar ache. She hated that she understood it. Raptor continued. They say he rose closer to the shore because he wants something. Attention, perhaps? Or vengeance? Or he has nowhere else to go. Creatures like that are dangerous, not just because of their teeth, but because they move with purpose. Joaquin's gaze sharpened. And you intend to stop him with jars and ropes? Raptor's expression turned wry. If I can't stop him, I can at least learn enough to warn others. But I have reason to believe he can be driven away. The currents here form a pattern that limits him. He's been circling these stretches repeatedly. That means either he's hunting or he's trapped by something he cannot cross. Raphael's eyes narrowed. And you camp here because you believe he will come? Yes, Raptor said simply. Tonight. The air has that feeling. Even the gulls are restless. As if in agreement, the wind shifted. It grew colder, heavier. The smell of the sea sharpened, tinged with something like ozone. Jihye lifted her head and stared out at the horizon. The sky had begun to change. The blue was fading into a bruised grey. Clouds gathered low and thick, rolling in from the far distance like an approaching army. Raptor stood and began to move with some urgency, checking ropes, tightening stakes, securing jars inside padded crates. Storm, he muttered, of course. Caleb's voice was tight. We should leave. No, Raptor said, not harshly, but firmly. If Estatrix comes, he'll come with the storm. He uses it. He hides in it. He makes men look at the sky instead of the water. If you leave now, you'll be out in the open with nowhere to shelter. Raphael rose slowly, gaze fixed on the incoming clouds. Then we prepare. The first gust struck them hard enough that the camp canvas snapped and billowed. Sand whipped across the ground. The sea, which had been restless before, grew violent. Waves surged closer, climbing higher up the beach with each strike. The tide did not seem to follow any ordinary rhythm. It was as if something beneath the surface was pulling it, calling it forward. Raptor swore and reached for the long metal pole with markings carved along its length. "That's my harpoon measure," he muttered. "If he surfaces, I need to see the scale." He rushed towards the shoreline, but a sudden wave surged far beyond where it should have, crashing over the sand and swallowing his tools in a single greedy pull. The pole vanished beneath white foam. Several jars toppled and shattered, their contents lost. Raptor stumbled back, eyes wide with frustration and fear. No! The water pulled away again, leaving the sand gouged and glistening. The storm howled. Then something rose. At first, Jihye thought it was another wave. Then she saw the shape within it, a curve too smooth, too deliberate. A vast back broke the surface, purple-hued and slick, glistening with strange luminescent patterns that pulsed faintly beneath the skin. A fin rose like a jagged sail. Water cascaded off it in sheets. Estatrix. The sheer size of him stole Jihye's breath. He was enormous, far larger than any creature should be able to lift from the sea. His head surfaced next, eyes like deep violet glass. For a heartbeat, he stared directly at the shore, directly at them, as if assessing whether they were worth the effort of killing. Raptor froze, a strangled sound in his throat. Raphael raised his hands and cast. Fire fled bright, a concentrated sphere that roared through the air and struck Estatrix's head. It did nothing. The flame broke apart against the Leviathan's skin as if it had hit stone. It fizzled into steam and vanished. Estatrix did not even flinch. Joaquin's bow was already drawn. He loosed 2 arrows in quick succession, one after another, both aimed for the eye. The arrow struck and bounced away, snapping like twigs against a wall. Caleb gasped, "That should have worked." Raphael's face tightened. His hide is warded. Estatrix opened his mouth. The roar that erupted was not sound alone. It was pressure, a force that hit their bodies like a wave. Jihye staggered. Caleb dropped to one knee, clutching his head. The horses screamed from their tether and fought against the ropes. The camp canvas tore free entirely and whipped away from the storm. Raptor scrambled for anything left. "My case!" he shouted, voice almost lost to the wind. "I need the case!" Another wave surged, higher than the last. It crashed into the shore and swept over the remaining equipment. The padded metal case was snatched and dragged into the sea as easily as a child's toy. Raptor's face went blank with disbelief. No. Estatrix lunged forward, water exploding around him. The next wave he drove struck closer than others, so close that the foam splashed against their boots. Panic swelled. Raphael's hands moved again, faster now, trying a different spell. A binding, a net of heat and light meant to catch and hold. It flared around the Leviathan's head, bright enough to illuminate the storm. Estatrix shook once. The spell shattered. Joaquin reached for another arrow, fingers tight. He looked at Jihye, a question in his eyes that he did not speak, a readiness to pull her back if she slipped. Jihye felt the amulet grow hotter. It pulsed against her skin, a heartbeat separate from her own. The heat spread into her chest, into her ribs, into that hidden place beneath her heart where the wrongness lived. She could feel the thing inside her stir, pleased. Jihye clenched her jaw. "No," she whispered, "not now." But the seas surged again, and Estratrix rose higher, towering above them, shadow blotting out what little light remained. His jaws opened, revealing rows of teeth like broken marble. Raptor stumbled backward. "Run," he choked. There was nowhere to run. Jihye made a decision before the fear could take it from her. She reached inward, forcing her mind into the shape of a dragon. She had done it before. It hurt, but she could do it. She needed size, power, and fire, something that could meet the Leviathan's strength. She began to shift. For a heartbeat, it worked. Heat surged through her bones. Her skin tightened. Scales began to form beneath her coat, her arms lengthening, fingers clawing. Then the amulet fled. The heat became something else, became a pressure that did not belong to her. It pulled at her shape like hands twisting dough. Her spine stretched too far. Her ribs expanded in an unnatural arc. Wings tore free, but not right. Thin at the edges, too long, veined with darkness instead of blood. Her scales were black, but not simply black. They looked like an absence of color, as if light vanished when it touched them. Her jaws lengthened, but her mouth held just too many teeth. Her eyes burned pale, and behind them something vast stirred, something that was not dragon at all. Joaquin shouted her name, voice sharp with alarm, but it was distant, muffled by the roaring in her skull. She could feel herself becoming wrong, combined with the void, stretched between forms that should never have touched. The dragon was there, but threaded through with eldritch imagery, shadows that moved independently of flesh. She let out a sound that was half roar, half scream. Estratrix recoiled. The Leviathan's massive head jerked backward, water spilling off his scales in sheets. His eyes widened, and something like fear crossed his features. His great body shuddered, as if he had been struck, not by fire or steel, but by recognition. He made a sound, low and trembling. "Acanthus," he cried, the name torn from him like a wound. The sound of that name hit Jihye like a blade. Something inside her surged in response. Rage, disgust, a refusal so fierce it burned through the wrongness. She lunged forward, not to kill, not fully, but to threaten, to make it clear. Her claws dug into wet sand. She thrust her head close enough that her breath blasted sea spray across Estratrix's face. Her voice, when it came, was not fully hers. It was deep, layered, edged with something ancient. "I am not Acanthus," she whispered, each word deliberate, threatening, and absolute. The Leviathan froze, then, slowly, as if obeying an unspoken command, Estratrix lowered himself. The storm still raged around them, but his body settled into the water instead of surging forward. His eyes remained fixed on her, no longer wild with hunger, but wary. He nodded once. The movement was small for something so massive, but it carried weight. Jihye felt the wrongness inside her pulse again, eager, wanting to take advantage of his fear, wanting to tear, wanting to feed. She strangled it with will and forced herself to breathe. Then Estratrix began to change. His vast form shimmered, the purple hide rippled, folding inward as water surged around him, bone and scale compressed. The monstrous head narrowed. The fins receded. In moments where the Leviathan had been, a man stood ankle-deep in the surf. He was tall, broad-shouldered, skin marked with faint iridescent patterns that looked like tide lines. His hair was dark and wet, clinging to his neck. His eyes remained the same deep violet, too old to belong to any human. Raptor stared, mouth open. "That is not possible." The man glanced at him with faint contempt. "You have been chasing what you don't understand." Then his gaze returned to Jihye. To everyone's shock, Jihye followed. Her wrong dragon form shuddered. Darkness peeled away in strands. Wings folded and vanished, and her bones snapped and realigned with painful force. The eldritch edges retreated reluctantly, leaving behind flesh and breath and shaking limbs. She fell to one knee in the wet sand, gasping, hands pressed into the ground to keep herself upright. Joaquin was at her side instantly, catching her shoulders. "Jihye," he said, voice tight with fear. "Look at me. Are you here?" She lifted her head slowly. Her eyes were still her own, exhausted, terrified, but present. "I'm here," she managed. Raphael stepped forward cautiously, eyes fixed on the man in the surf. His hands were raised slightly, ready to cast, but he did not. Something in him recognized that spells were not the right language here. Caleb hovered behind Joaquin, trembling. The man in the surf watched them all with unsettling calm, then spoke with a certainty that made Jihye's stomach twist. "You need me," he said. Raphael's eyes narrowed. "We do not even know what you are." "Estatrix," the man replied, almost amused, as if naming self should settle everything. "The bastard you were warned about, the unwanted heir of the deep, the one your scholar friend was trying to trap with jars." Raptor bristled. "I was not trapping you." Estatrix's smile was thin. "You were trying to measure me. Humans always measure what frightens them. It makes you feel less small." He turned his attention back to the group, violet eyes lingering on Jihye with something like recognition and calculation. "You have a problem," Estatrix said, voice quiet but carrying easily over the wind. "A god-shaped problem, and you're walking towards the Lurines like lambs, hoping the wolves will teach you mercy." Jihye's fingers curled into the wet sand. "Why would you help us?" Estatrix's gaze sharpened. "Because if Arcanthus rises, the sea will not be spared. His disdain does not stop at land. He will hunt what he considers weak. Leviathans are old, but we are not gods. We bleed, we die, and he hates anything that can be broken." Raphael's face went still, as if a new piece had just clicked into place. "You recognized his name." Estatrix's jaw tightened. For a heartbeat, he looked less like a man and more like anything vast wearing the shape. "I've heard it whispered through currents older than your species," he said. "I've seen what follows it. You're not Arcanthus," he added, eyes sliding to Jihye again. "But something of him is on you, enough that even I mistook the scent for a moment." Jihye swallowed hard. Joaquin's grip on her shoulders tightened slightly, grounding her. Raptor stared between them, struggling to understand. "You came to shore because you wanted what? To speak?" "I came to shore because the storm forced me," Estatrix replied, "because I was testing the edge of something, and because I smelled you." His gaze did not leave Jihye. "The binding is thinning. The world is shifting. You are walking into it whether you like it or not." Jihye lifted her chin, forcing steadiness. "Then speak plainly, what do you want?" Estatrix's smile returned faint and sharp. "An agreement. I will guide you through the coastal waters where my kind listen. I will tell you what the currents know, what the deep remembers about bindings and old gods. In return, you stop treating me as a beast to be hunted. And when your war reaches the water, you do not forget that the sea has its own dead to count." Raphael's eyes flickered to Joaquin, then to Caleb, then back to Estatrix. His voice was controlled. "Why should we trust you?" Estatrix tilted his head. "You should not trust anyone," he said calmly, "not fully. But you should be pragmatic. Your fire does not touch me. Your arrows do not pierce me. Your girl does not know what she is becoming. You need knowledge, and you need strength that does not come from mortal libraries." The storm began to ease slowly, as if the sea itself had decided the conversation mattered more than violence. The waves still crashed, but they no longer surged upward with the same unnatural hunger. The wind shifted, less sharp. Jihye's chest still ached from the wrong transformation, from the way the void had tried to lace itself through her dragon again. She could feel the thing inside her waiting, listening, pleased that it had been named. She hated it. But Estertrix's words were true. They were outmatched by the forces closing around them, and they had walked far enough to know that survival would not come from pride. Raphael spoke at last. "We will consider your terms." Estertrix's eyes glinted. "Do more than consider," he said softly. "Decide. Because the sea is not patient, and neither is a god who believes the world owes him worship." Jihye looked at Joaquin, then at Caleb, then at Raphael. In the distance, the road continued towards the Vale of the Lurines, pale and waiting. Behind them lay Peltoris and fire and the weight of what they had done. Above them, the clouds began to thin, revealing a strip of bruised twilight. Jihye drew in a careful breath. "What do you know about the Lurines?" she asked Estertrix. He smiled, and in that smile she saw something ancient and weary. "Enough," he said. "Enough to know they will not welcome you. Enough to know they might still help you. And enough to know that if they refuse, you will need another path." Raphael's voice was flat. "And you think you are that path?" Estertrix's gaze remained steady. "I think I'm one of them." Jihye's hand drifted to her chest again. The amulet was still warm, still awake. The thing beneath her heart stirred as if listening. Estertrix watched the movement and spoke one final sentence, low enough that it felt meant for her alone. "Whatever is inside you," he said, "it is not sleeping anymore." Then he stepped closer out of the surf and extended his hand, not as a threat, but as an offer. "You have a problem," Estertrix repeated. "Let me help you solve it."